Over the years, Nigeria has seen its fair share of developmental policies. Most recently is the Vision 2020 and the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which both expire by December of 2020. The jury is still out on how effective these plans have been, but the president has created a successive development plan aimed at lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty by 2030.
The National Steering Committee is to be jointly chaired by Mr. Atedo Peter Said and Dr. Mrs. Zainab S. Ahmed, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The National Steering Committee is to oversee governance structure comprising the Central Working Group and 26 technical working groups for this important national assignment.
The National Steering Committee is made up of representatives from political parties, captains of industries, labor organizations, youth organizations and women's societies, traditional and religious leaders, among others. The steering committee will oversee the execution of key deliverables, including recommending measures to ensure the continuous implementation of the plans, even after the expiration of the tenure of successive administrations.
Part of the problem in Nigeria was that, historically, of course, we're a much younger nation. Ideas that should have come to stay, that should have been embraced by the whole nation. Somebody will come, throw it this way, the next person will come, turn it upside down, the next one will come, begin afresh. So we never got a chance to really cement and put some things down and build a national consensus of a type which nobody can get up again and say, oh, like in the UK, let's scrap national health. So those are the types of things we're looking for. The type of consensus on important things where you're involving all the major political parties that can transcend, and if everybody accepts them, you put those things behind you, and everybody takes them for granted. Because an economy where everything is being debated every time is going nowhere.
This is yet another attempt at setting a medium to long-term developmental plan for the country. Nigerians will be watching closely to see how well the plan delivers on its promises. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
On Monday, September the 7th, members of the Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors declared a nationwide industrial action to protest against the non-payment of their COVID-19 hazard allowance, the non-funding of their residency training program, as well as outstanding arrears of salaries.
To talk before we sign.
This meeting with the federal government's negotiating team is at the instance of the Minister of Labor and Employment, who is the conciliator.
Thank you, sir.
In their separate remarks, both the Minister of State for Health and the Minister of Labor and Employment described the strike as unwarranted, ill-timed, and a ploy to discredit the federal government.
It is painful, especially to some of us who are medical doctors, that while efforts are being made to make sure that the ship of state is afloat, especially in the medical industry with the pandemic, people are going on strike. And the only conclusion somebody outside there would take, logical conclusion, is that people are acting under script. You are acting under script to badmouth this government. You called on all health workers to down tools. That is bad. Every effort is being made, even from the highest authority of the land. And that's Mr. President. Mr. President is very, very cognizant of the need to give the best to health workers generally. But we must not push ourselves too far. There is no right that is absolute. Every right is qualified.
After those remarks by the two ministers, it appears the industrial action should not have come up in the first place.
Let me, on behalf of the enemy president, apologize again profusely on behalf of the NAT president, our younger colleagues. Sometimes it is due to the tension we receive, especially when the ultimate happens, when we lose a colleague in the front line.
The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors declared a nationwide strike on Monday, insisting that its members will only get back to work when their demands are met. The government, however, says 6 out of the 8 demands, which include the payment of special hazard allowance, provision of personal protective equipment, and group life insurance, have already been met. As it is, the ball is now in the court of the doctors, who are expected to suspend the strike after holding their executive council meeting.
Okay, all right. Quite a number of issues there, but we'll start off with the latter, which is the strike. Well, it appears as though they are going to go ahead and sign an MOU, but some of the surrounding events concerning this one, we've got 3 gentlemen to discuss some of these events. Dr. Ahmad Sulaiman, a legal practitioner, he joins us from our studios in Abuja. He's a good governance advocate, a lecturer of public law, Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Thank you for joining us this morning. We also do have Oladimeji Fabi.
Thank you for having me.
All right. He's a strategic management consultant and a member of the PDP, as well as Dr. Odiakpo Obire, who is the president, Good Leadership Advocacy for Africa, also joining us online. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today. Let me start with you, Dr. Sulaiman. Looking at how this unfolded and unfolding, the strike by the resident doctors, and do we say the eventual outcome, or at least there still will be some response much later when the doctors meet and have their own executive or NEC meeting and come up with a final position? But having looked at what transpired before the strike, during the strike, and now, what do you think of it all? Dr. Sulaiman, can you hear me? That's for you.
Issue. First, let me start with the note that it's unfortunate. The period now is quite unfortunate for medical doctors to go on strike. But now, speaking professionally as an expert in international industrial relations, I can see that the reaction of government is very coordinated. One, you can see there are temporary measures taken by the letter written by the Minister of Health, which provided for 4 administrative temporary measures to protect the citizenry from the harsh effect of the strike. Secondly, which is the permanent side, you can see that from their demands, about 3 of their demands seems to have been met. And if you look at the body language of the meeting there, you can see that we expect a very good outcome soon. So I think if you look at generally the reaction of government and temporary and permanent measures, I think as far as the government is concerned, a reliable measure have been taken to protect the nation.
Mr. Fabi, from your perspective, look, having seen how it also transpired, you share the same view?
Well, good morning, Nigerians, and good morning, Chamberlain. First and foremost, I do not share, the view of my brother there. It's quite unfortunate, like he said, that we have to find ourselves again in this situation. Government has every opportunity to be truthful and act responsibly, and that's what is lacking at the moment. When you have an agreement with an agency or a group of people, it behoves on you to fulfill that agreement. The question now is, why should they wait to this point that these guys are now saying we're embarking on strike before they begin to act and now calling for meetings to resolve the matter? So it will be so unfair to put the blame at the doorstep of these doctors. These are essential services provider. So the government has not acted responsibly in this regard. They have not been so truthful and they should be able to take responsibility when issues like this arises. So I disagree with the gentleman there who said the government have coordinated very well and they have provided a permanent solution to the situation. I don't think so, and I don't share in that view. The government should rise up and act responsibly. That is what is needed.
Well, but Mr. Obire, you are a good leadership advocate. The ministers there did accuse the doctors of some perhaps seemingly ulterior motive, because they say 6 out of the 8 demands have been met. Why would they be calling on health workers to down tools when it's just matter has to do with NERD? So isn't the government in a good stead in the way they acted?
Well, Chamberlain, you see, the issue of health is a serious issue. It's not something that we should handle with some unserious positions. Because if you take a look at what has happened so far, it is wrong not to pay the doctors their allowance promptly. Doctors outlive on the line of to contain the disease. These are people that have put their life on the line for others to live. And if they are doing this, they are to be paid before even the purchase of medications. Test kits or people in absence, the drugs meaning nothing. If you are not paying the doctors who are supposed to be on the front line of the burner, how do you forge ahead with fighting the COVID-19? So it is wrong to have asked the minister. It is wrong for the minister to have come out to say that COP doctors should replace consultants at federal hospitals. It is very wrong. It's just like you going to a mechanic workshop and allowing an apprentice to work on your engine. You can never drive that car. The youth corpers, they don't have that. They don't have that expertise yet to handle critical situations. Yes, they are doctors. They are trained doctors.
Yeah,
but they don't have
point made there, Dr. Obere. But let me ask Dr. Sulaiman this question. From your experience dealing with trade union issues, as you have said, and of course you said the minister took a good action by putting out that information. But you would know that this strike that they had to discuss over was just suspended, was not called off. Because perhaps there was a suspicion that, okay, this thing could happen and then we could need to call this strike one more time. What, in your opinion, do you think necessitates a call for strike in the first place, especially while conversations were still ongoing, as the federal government said?
Thank you very much. This is a very good question. But please, there is a misconception I want to clear before I proceed from the earlier discussions. If you look at the letter by the minister, there is a misconception when somebody picks NYSC and say the government is using NYSC to replace resident doctors. If you look at the letter, the issue of NYSC came on item 3, on the third item, on 4 listed administrative options listed by the minister. And what the minister said was that the directors should use consultants first, and then after comma, he said NYSC. So it was not that NYSC were to replace, but NYSC were to be also in support of consultants to take care of that. Now, having cleared that and having put the issue clear to understand that in Nigeria we have this problem. Sometimes we create misconceptions around the real issues on ground. Now, having cleared that misconception, let me move to your next question. Now, the next question is that what necessitates this strike? And that is what, to be frank with you, I find quite unfortunate. If you look at, for the past couple of months to now, there have been misconception, war, and battlefield. I can understand with the ministers when they think this is beyond the ordinary, beyond the way the doctors are reacting to this situation. But as somebody who have played tripartite role, I've led strike, I've been a head of industrial relations in ABU Zaria, and then industrial relations is my expertise. I can look from the three sides and say sometimes unions take advantage of circumstances and conditions. We are in a condition now where federal government's hands are very tight because one, you have the challenge of corona pandemic, and then you have a lot of pressures on government, misconception problems on government. So this is a time where if you have any union coming up to look for a grievance, they are at the wrong side of the bargaining power. They will try to do anything to solve the problem. So you can see it is a situation where it is perfectly clear for the union to bend the hands of federal government to get what they want. But I don't think it's very necessary if you consider the fact that I saw the minister saying it, and before them, that about 6 of these, their demands have been met. So I think if you look at the whole scenario from the tripartite point of view, I don't want to go into the political side because I'm not speaking as a professional, but if you look at the 3 tripartite situation, not minding the consumption war.
Sorry, Dr. Sulaiman, if you don't mind, just one moment. Are you saying that there are political considerations that could have played a role in this matter?
I think now, let me now speak as an activist. I was speaking as a professional. Now I want you to look at from the past 1 month to date, there have been a lot of perception pressures on this government. I have been part of a committee. If this program time allows, later I will share with you my experience in a committee with some federal government functionaries that saw to the diffusion of some tensions, which were based on perception. And by the time we diffused the tension, it was seen, it was clear to everybody, to all the parties, that the problems were not what they were perceived to be. I'm talking about our roles in diffusing the issues of karma and Khan and all that. So from my experience, from what I've seen, you can see, I've been in the media for so long. When you see perception war going on, you need not be told. All these perception pressures on federal government are built up to 2023. You can see the media is so awash with a lot of perception problems. I want us to finish with this issue of resident doctors strike. Maybe if time permits, you will agree with me that there is perception battlefield going on in the country now. And this may have an effect on the coming out of timing and the coming out of the strike now.
Now that you bring that up, it will be interesting to hear the side of Mr. Fabi, who is a member of the PDP. So now, Dr. Sulaiman thinks that there's a perception war ongoing. Are you a party to that war?
Not what Dr. Sulaiman is saying, but let me start by saying that I sympathize with the President of Nigeria, Mr. President, because he seems a nice man, but being nice does not solve our problem. One thing as a leader is for you to have a vision. Another thing is for you to have people who can help you drive this vision. There's something called DTS, Dream, Team, and Steam. The moment a leader lacks in any of these departments, is bound to fail. Now, one thing is for you to have a dream. Another thing is for you to have a team that can help you drive it. And at the same time, this team must have his team to deliver the goods. And that's exactly what is lacking in this government. That is why we see all these ups and downs, all these irregularities and somersaults and all sorts. So I don't share that view. For me, if you don't have the right team, as a striker, you need wingers, you need midfielders who can supply you good passes to be able to score goals and have your achievement. So, and this, unfortunately, has made the Buhari-led government, has turned into a promissory note administration. They keep shifting posts. Once people are about cross-checking the manifestation of their electoral manifesto, and this does not go well because 5 years ago, these guys came up with a 3-pronged political agenda. They wanted to ensure good security. They want to fix the economy, anti-corruption campaign, and all that. On the aforementioned, all these things I've mentioned, the rulership of the APC already hit the iceberg because suddenly, barely 3 years to leave office, they are now setting up ministerial committee on performance. Look at what is happening in our health sector. Must they wait to this point Have these doctors not been talking about their challenges, the need for them to receive their allowances as I went due? This is what we are talking about. The management of our healthcare system is zero. Look at other climes, other countries, how they manage their healthcare workers during this COVID pandemic. Why is our own so different? And that's why, for me, I've always said that if you have barely three years to leave office, and that is the time they are now setting up a ministerial committee on performance and going about to set up another 9-point development agenda, which is bound to fail. And this is bound to fail because of so many variables, so many factors. Now, there are people that have been discarded who could have helped these political eggers, who could have helped this government perform better. Where is Atiku Abubakar, for instance? Where is the Kwakwa and Sos? Where are all of them? Where is Bukola Saraki and all them that would have helped this government? Because they have it. You can't take it away from Atiku, his capacity, his understanding of good modern governance and delivery of good service, good governance. So we can't take it away from him. So where are all these people? They are nowhere to be found. OBJ once said that it is inefficient and unreasonable to invest in failure. Because it says so, because national planning is for people who believe in national development or in national government and without any bias. All these things are lacking. So for me, I don't understand the direction of this government. They've come up with, just a few days ago, they were talking about another national development plan to 2050. We'll see and wait to see how this will pan out as we journey ahead. Successive governments have equally initiated vision. The people 2010, 2020, how far did they go that anyone is building on them? So
interestingly, some of those plans were also developed by the PDP when the PDP was in government. But let me take this to Dr. Diakpo. Interestingly, we started off with health issues. We started to look at the issue with resident doctors and how to find a resolution. And somehow we found ourselves on the road to 2023. It's quite interesting. But when you hear these kinds of conversation, do you also think there are political considerations in place here, or should we just face those issues as they are individually?
You see, in leadership, it's a comprehensive package. The president of the country is doing the best he can to see that every sector is functional. But like a doctor said, if you look at the people driving the dream of Mr. President, a lot of them are in line and others have some setbacks. So if we are talking about political undertone on issues that has to do with governance, yes, it's very important for people to say things. It's very important to bring up ideas. It's very important to want to put things on the right path. But if you don't have the right people to drive this, then things will never move the way they are supposed to move. The president, in the first instance, when this issue came up, the president was pragmatic in his decision by releasing 1 billion naira to NCDC to tackle the issues, and people donated monies to fight this COVID-19. The president tried the best he could do to add more money to that, and according to the records, 32 billion has been expended on the COVID-19 fight. So I think government should have been proactive. The minister and some other people concerning the issue of payment of the doctors should have been proactive in paying. They shouldn't have waited for doctors to ask for the allowances before embarking on strike. But this has happened, and I believe that the Minister of Labor and others that are involved, they have come together to be able to strike a path. Let's see if they can also hold on to the path that they have struck and see the doctors back to the hospitals. I believe that the government is doing the best it can do to ensure, because governance is not easy. It's not
back
by
to
looking
Dr.
at it from
Sulaiman.
the outside. When you're on it,
All right, just hang on. Let me bring in Dr. Sulaiman on this one. I mean, talk about because when he says the people who are to execute your vision, they've got to be the right people. And if they're not, you'll have challenges. Now, at least you talked about you being in the media and being an activist. So communication is something that's not strange to you. How much of a communication challenge do you see in all of this? And to what extent does communication challenges stop and your capacity as a leader kick in such that you can then overcome those communication challenges and then carry out those policies, in other words, deliver on what you've been saddled with in this case?
Thank you very much. Perception plays a very, communication perception plays a very key role. Let me cite an instance. I want you to remember specifically in this program, there was a time you focused on corruption and anti-corruption war, and I was part of those invited to discuss here. And I based my facts on statistics from EFCC and all that, and said that the government did very well in anti-corruption, but there is an issue of perception. Some of my participants, co-participants, did not agree with that. But happily, here in this program, last month, you people invited Oliver Stopp, who also reiterated the same fact I buttressed last time. He said, as far as anti-corruption war is concerned, there's been some progress. But the problem is that perception is raising high against the performance of the government. Now, having established that, let me also say that we haven't agreed that we have perception issues in the government and in Nigeria generally, not just this government. I'm a student of Chinua Achebe when it comes to the way out in the problems of Nigeria. If you read his book, The Trouble with Nigeria, I think in page 2, in page 6, he said, I think, there is nothing wrong with Nigerian river, climate, or environment. There is nothing wrong with Nigerian temperament. The problem with Nigeria is simple and square failure of leadership. Now, having buttressed the role of leadership in this, let us now look at this government. What happened, or in what stage are we? If you look at this government, you will see that it is a government that have realized this issue of perception and is quick to find a remedy. If you look at the recent ministerial retreat, part of the two high points of the address of the president, one of it was his emphasis on his ministers not only to go and act well, but to also communicate well, to blow their trumpet.
Right, Dr. Sulaiman, when we return from this break, you'll continue from that point, so just hold your train of thought. We're back in a moment. Dr. Sulaiman, could you go ahead and conclude your thoughts, please?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, there is something that marks this station, Channels TV, your analytical approach to national issues. Please, give me 3 minutes to lay a background to set the ball rolling on this discussion. I want to use 1 minute to discuss the background to the ministerial retreat, and then 2 minutes.
Okay, but it won't be 3 minutes right away because you have other people who are there, but we will come back to you as well as you progress.
Okay. In a nutshell, you can see that we have a government that is perfectly responding from the leadership point of view, tackling the communication point of view, and then handling the synergy and collaboration problem issues that have been there before. I think I look forward to a great Nigeria from what I saw last week.
Okay, we all want a great Nigeria, don't
Hello?
we? But
are you with me?
Yes, but okay, since you concluded that thought, we'll come back to you in a moment, but let's get Mr. Fabi to equally respond to this. Now, when he speaks about perception and communicating the whatever it is that the authorities are doing, do we even give them the benefit of the doubt, saying, well, yes, indeed, it is done, or is it that politically, in order to be politically right, so to speak, you have to latch on the overriding perception, rightly or wrongly?
Well, sincerely, we sincerely we can give them the benefit of the doubt. But one thing that really scares me, that really strikes me about this government, and badly too, is what they've been able to do in the last 6 years. Chamberlain, the fastest the economy has grown in the 5-year period of 2016 to 2020 is 2.2%. So, and someone will now come and tell me that no, they've done wonderfully well, which is far below the yearly average, the yearly average GDP growth of 6% in the last 10 years. So, in the last 5 years, let us look at what they've been able to do based on what they've promised Nigerians. This is exactly what I'm saying. But when you begin to exhibit failure upon failure, people will not want to listen to you, and that is where the perception thing comes in, and people believe that these people don't have nothing to offer. That's exactly where I'm saying. When a government, for instance, a government that has failed on all its plans, on all its key plans, and built to leave power in about 3 years, it's unfortunate. They can't be looking for bricks to build 30-year planning policy. It's not, anything you build on void is void, and any dream without a great team cannot succeed. This is exactly what they are saying. They have provided this perception of failure to the Nigerian people, and that's why sometimes people don't want to even give them a chance to say anything. Go out there and see what people are and hear what people are saying. This government is practically living on staggering debt and Eldorado dreams, and that is not how it works. Nigerians are moaning and groaning under heavy poverty, yoke of inflation, so many things, gross unemployment, brazen nationwide insecurity, all that. So tell me, how do you want people to look at government? How can anyone predict a futuristic policy, for instance, to a population of frustrated Nigerians, frustrated citizens? It doesn't work like that.
Just one moment. Let me ask Dr. Obire this one. Well, to a large extent, all of this conversation has focused a lot on, what the federal government has been doing or not doing, the impact, the effect, and all of that. And of course, we have spoken about communication or a lack of it, to the point where people do understand or do not understand what government is saying. If we transit this conversation from the federal government level to the states level, what quality of leadership have you seen, and how impactful have that been on the welfare of the people?
I would say that every government is unique, because every environment is unique when it comes to governance. Some are easy, others are not. But if I must go by your question, a lot of the governors have not really done well in their respective states. Not all the governors. A lot, yes, we can see that a lot of them are doing one thing or the other to make life easy, most especially investing on infrastructure and all that. But I still think that they have more to do, because in a situation where you have people without capacity or people without planned templates taking the seat of government, it's really difficult to achieve much for the people. So I will say that the governance is not just about the federal, because everybody is looking at the federal. Everybody is looking at Buhari. All the blames are on the federal government, and that is not right. We have members representing people at the National Assembly, at the state houses of assembly. We have local government chairmen. We have the governors, and nobody is talking about the performance of his or her governor. Everybody is talking about what is coming from the federal, what the federal has done, forgetting that we have state government, we have state house of assembly to make the right laws, and the governor to have the right policies, and commissioners to drive the policy of the government. And in a situation where you have a redundant civil service in most of the state, the civil service is redundant because they are not responsive. when the man that is driving the seat of government is trying to put a lot in place at the federal, and the states are not complementing the efforts, then you will see a lot of setback and the people will feel the impact. In my state, I am from Delta State, with much volume of funds that comes into Delta State every month. My governor is talking about cutting the salaries of makes sense. And if governors are just sitting to receive from Abuja and spread without looking at investing and improving their capital base, then it doesn't make sense at all. So I see a lot of setbacks within the states in Nigeria, and is affecting the people negatively. We have no reason.
Just one moment, Dr. Obiri. Dr. Sulaiman might also want to react to that, especially when it comes to governments at the level of the states. You've spoken, Dr. Sulaiman, a lot about perception management as far as the federal government is concerned. But not much, especially about perception management, has been said about the states' governments over the years. What's your take, and what should we be doing to improve governance on that level and perception?
I think a lot needs to be done there, but what needs to be done falls also on us, the citizens. If you look at the federal government have taken a leading role there by ensuring passing directives and assenting to legislations that empowers independence of judiciary at state level and monotony of local government, giving them freedom to do whatever they want to do. But the issue is that our polity have always looked up on the central government for solutions to every problem. These have led us to perception problems, everything focused on the federal government, not focusing on holding their immediate local and state governments responsible for their failures. Because constitutions have also given them their own role, and then financial allocations have also been monthly given to them. But because of the level of exposure of our populace, we are yet to have that educated insight into how to even assess the performance of our government. Take, for instance, now, how, if you look at the progress this government have made since 2015 to date, see how people still hamper on infrastructure. What is there? Niger Bridge is there for people to say. Nobody is seeing it because we are used to just seeing things as we are shown. Ibi Bridge is there being constructed now. It has started. Nobody is saying anything about it. Wari to Lokoja Railway is going on. Nobody is saying anything about it.
But
the
Dr.
Kaduna to Abuja, although it has started.
Okay, but if I could follow up on some of these things.
What I'm saying is that...
Just hang on a minute. When you say that, they look to the center a lot, is that not a reason? Because in the first instance, you hear different states saying, we've repaired, reconstructed federal roads in our states, because of how bad they are. We couldn't wait for the federal government. Please, you need to refund us. And then they also look to the government to get approvals for certain things to function in their own states. Without the government's approval, it can't happen. Different governors will tell you, well, I'm chief security officer on paper. The center controls security. The center receives a large chunk of the revenue of this country. The center, so why aren't these all reasons why they have to keep looking at the center?
No, they are not the reason. When they repair federal roads and look for reimbursement, that is an investment. They have their economic interest in that. Even if they have other ways of getting those things done. For instance, how the Taraba state government had the Ibi Bridge being constructed? They didn't do that by putting their money. They did that by following up with federal government to make sure that that bridge is coming up to link Taraba State with the whole of Northern State through Ibi. So what I'm saying is that states have an option. Use your fundings to take care of your immediate responsibilities and use your influence, use your connections and contact to influence.
Part of what I just said was pointing to the states complaining that they do not have the resources as much. They say that the center has no business having so much access to a lot of the funds wherein the people are in the states where development needs to happen?
No, I think the problem, Chamberlain, to be very straight with you and frank, the issue is that the capacity of our state and local government leadership is very low. We don't have people there. I'm not saying talking about all of them, but most of them, we don't have people there who have the capacity to think creatively, create revenue. How many states are coming up with new dreams for their state the way Lagos did? Lagos did and moved itself even without federal allocation for years. So the issue is that state governments are not raising up to that responsibility because of the caliber of leadership that are emerging from their legislative arm as well as some of the executive arm. But with the way things are going on, I don't have much problem with that because I know in about a decade or two, things will straighten out. Because the essence of democracy is that people try, learn from their mistake, try, learn from their mistakes. They will get to a point where people will be choosing from the basis of their capacity, in which case now you will have people with capacity, because it takes a lot of thinking, maturity of thought, creativity to lead a nation, to lead a state, to lead a community. And this is what is like. How many times have you seen states come?
I just wonder what some of the other states will think, you comparing them with the resources that Lagos has. So, but conclude your thoughts so we can move to Mr.
Lagos did not sit down to allow resources to fall down on its lap. Lagos stood up, look into how do I modernize my land use system? How do I increase my revenue system? How do I create my independent energy source? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I reach onto international global economic atmosphere and also catch up? So, but how many states are doing that?
Well, Dr. Sulaiman, that's a very good point that you have made. Just one moment. Let me ask Mr. Fabi this one as well, because to a large extent, Mr. Fabi, you've spoken about what the federal government has done or not done, even compared different governments and different leaderships from time to time. But then that issue of the responsibility of the states, it's beyond this particular stage of our government. It's been since the Fourth Republic. People have been complaining about the leadership at the states levels. What's your take, and what should we be doing?
Thank you very much, Kayode. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about this is the structure of our governance. When you have, we have 3 tiers of government with their specific responsibilities, and as far as I know, the federal government controls everything. And that is the reason many people, whenever there's a problem in their state, are not even looking at what their state government is doing. Because, for instance, look at security. The government controls every facet of our security. The government is involved in so many things, involved in agriculture, involved in education and everything. That is the reason people are leaving their local governments, their state government.
Just one moment, Mr. Fabi. In that light, do you think it is correct, it's right for us to continue in that stead, or is there something we should be doing that we haven't even considered doing yet?
That's exactly where I'm heading to. There's need for us to have a change of plan, a change of program, and a change of whatever system we're using. And that's why I'm a student. I'm a supporter of restructuring that we talked about, because we need to look into all these areas, because we've come a long way with this system that is not working for us. So there is need for us to look elsewhere and do something new. So secondly is the fact that both the federal and state government find it so difficult, their inability to come up with new ideas, new innovation, new things that will bring new things on board. That's another problem we're having, and we have to look at that also. Again, this is one of the reasons why you see federal government and state government running for debt, running for loan at all times, at every beck and call, to be able to show up the economy of the country. Just 2 days ago, recently, the DMO came up, released statement on our debt stock. That's about 31 trillion, So these are the things that are happening, and this debt is not just. It wasn't just the federal government that got all these loans and debt. The state governments are part of it. So these are the things that we need to look into and come up with a more proactive measure that will take us away from this.
Let's bring it on to Mr. Obiri. My apologies. What do you think that the authorities should be doing and perhaps saying that will make sense to a lot of Nigerians right now who are just feeling the pinch?
I think the different levels of government need to look inward. From the states, which controls the local government in most states today in this country, they control the local government activities, and it's not supposed to be so. If you go to South Africa today, you will see that the roads, electricity, and so many infrastructural development that are going on in that country are not done by the federal government. They are not done by the regional government. They are done by the municipalities. They are done by the local government authorities. Now, we are talking about the impact of governance on the people. How will the people feel the impact when those we saddle with responsibility of governance think about themselves, their cronies, and what they can achieve within, what they can amass within the short space of time, and not the legacy that they can leave within the short space of time they have to serve the people. Many are not serving. They are ruling the people, and that is not right. In the first place, let's talk about the little that they have, because my brother there said that everything is in the central. I disagree with that. Everything is not in the central. If a governor knows what to do, he knows how to raise his economic plans and how to execute the templates that he has to move the state forward. That is why they run for election. That is why they want to be governors. But some of them just want to be governors to add their name to the list of those who have ruled the state. They don't have capacity. They don't have ideologies. They don't have anything experience to drive an economy. Now, far from that, let us see the little that they have received. First of all, you should be able to judge somebody or appraise somebody from the little that they have received.
All right, Mr. Bire.
Federal government or any application, whether internally generated or from the federal government.
All right, we need to anchor at that point, but really there are things that no matter the ideas that you have, you can't do it as a state without the federal government signing off on that. There's that of economy, security, energy, so they do exist. So we need to acknowledge that as well. But we have to thank you, Mr. Ojakpo Obire, President, Good Leadership Advocacy for Africa, Oladimeji Fabi, a member of the PDP and a strategic management consultant, as well as Dr. Ahmed Sulaiman, legal practitioner and good governance advocate. At least you got more than the 3 minutes that you requested for. So we thank you all for coming on today. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Mr. Fred Nzako joins us now. Well, good morning and thank you for joining us today. But having listened to the chairman of INEC speaking about the measures that they put in place to ensure that no matter what you see, the hoopla, the back and forth between political parties, these measures that he announced just before we came back to you, if they are to be in place, the electorate may just have to be rest assured that their vote will count. Does that come across to you as such?
Well, it does, but what is important is what we see on the day of election and not the rhetorics given by anybody. I use the word rhetorics because from experience and Nigerian historical electoral experience, the rhetorics have always been good, but the practice where at the end of the day become short of expectation. What we expect is having done and conducted the elections at various levels. At this point, we expect that whatever INEC says about their preparation should be carried through. Whatever preparation they say they have made should be respected and should be given some teeth. And at the end of the day, we ensure that the credibility of the process is top-notch. So that the credibility of the process is not such that we'll begin to belabor the judiciary to determine who becomes the governor. The process must be one that will throw up the governor at the polling booths by the various people who have come out to cast their votes in Edo State. And judging by the number of people who have collected their PVCs in Edo State, according to the resident electoral commissioner, about over 1.7 million people, we expect that if a credible election is conducted, Edo people have opportunity to decide who becomes their next governor. So,
you mentioned specific processes. One of the specific processes you mentioned is using some electronic devices to transport the results from the voting place to a dedicated portal.
That is what
is that suggesting that we're already transiting into electronic transfer of results?
I want to tell you with due respect that as far back as 2019 election, INEC told Nigerians that that was to be the case. And that was what led to the hoopla and the hula baloo about the issue of INEC server or no INEC server. But let that rest in the history of the past. Let us move forward. We expected that going forward, if INEC chair has said that they will deploy technology in Edo election, that is very gladdening to the heart of every Nigerian, because we know from experience that the problem with the election does not only reside with the point of voting, it also resides at the point of collation. The collation process is the major process, the major challenge in electoral process, the collation. So if electronic transmission of results can be done in Edo, I can tell you it will drastically minimize the manipulation that is attendant to electoral collation process. Because what it means is that the time lag of transportation of results, if I use your language, which I like so much, transportation of results, that time frame between the voting point and the collation point is very, very important. That is where manipulation comes in. And if you do manual collation of results, somebody can turn 1 to 7 and turn 7 to 9. It becomes very easy. And because this is a huge, they have to deal with huge documentation, at the end of the day, it becomes easy for the fellow who is entering the results to manipulate the outcome at the end of the day. But if it is electronically transmitted, it works seamlessly. And at that point, it is a case of the computers adding 1 plus 1 to give us 2, and not human beings adding 1 plus 11 to give us 2.
You know, the tricky part about this is the fact that, yes, INEC has introduced some of these measures. In fact, they're tinkering with that public viewing portal for people to view election results. I think it was used in Nasarawa just recently, and it is meant to be used for this election in Edo State, even though it's not quite clear how that will work, or even if that will be used eventually. But people also say that's subject to manipulation, some sort of manipulation. I mean, you have people hacking and what have you. But, you know, I'd like to go back to what you began with. Now, when we asked about INEC's readiness, you said, well, this kind of rhetoric in court is what you have heard time and again. And I wonder, so we seem to get it right on paper, or at least when we give, you know, media rounds, we say INEC is ready, INEC is prepared for this election. And what you find on election day is quite different. You've talked about manipulation of collation of results, but is that the only loophole that we have in elections?
Of course, that's not the only loophole, but that is the most critical one. You know, in times past, we used to have challenge of snatching of ballot boxes. That has gone down in history as not coming up again. Because if anybody tries to snatch the ballot box of any polling station, the election of that polling station will be cancelled. So that has been taken care of. Now the thing now snowballed again into the issue of collation. If INEC can handle the issue of collation electronically and ensure that results are transmitted electronically, that will also take care of that. But now the challenge that you talked about the manipulation of, where some people raise the fear that even the process of transmission can also be manipulated. But we know from experience and on record that it is a lot easier to manipulate things using human hands than using the buttons of the computer. Because if INEC can walk their talk and establish such viewing centers where immediately results are arriving, people will be seeing the results on the spot. And as it is coming in, not only that people will be seeing it on the spot, the system will be picking it for storage. So it will minimize manipulation. Much as that is not the only problem. The second problem that INEC must also look into is the issue of voter intimidation. That is not only residing with INEC, that one resides essentially with the security agencies.
Okay, Mrs. Zako, before we get to that security point,
Yes.
now, when, I think in 2015, when there's a certain report that indicated that Professor Jaga achieved, I think, 54% card reader authentication. I think subsequent elections were fairly little short of it. But introducing the Z-Pad, which is also part of those measures to improve our voting process, which perhaps will also facilitate that authentication. Are there concerns? Because, I mean, there have been certain media reports that indicated that those were being, to some extent, jettisoned or were going to be influenced. But from what he has said now, is there any reason for anyone to doubt that this process may not be as transparent?
Those who know such pessimism are looking at the historical facts. Under Professor Tahiru Jaga, when the electronic means of voting card authentication by use of the card reader was introduced, it recorded about 56%. And in 2019, when we expected that the process must have improved, because technology does not go backward, it goes forward, it recorded a lesser percentage, I think about between 18-20%, which was a far cry from the 54-56% it recorded of authentication success it recorded prior to 2015 and in 2015. Now, in Kogi election, for example, the statistics show that the record of such successful authentication of voters' card by the card reader was abysmally below the poor performance of 2019. That was almost about 8-9%. So if the historical trajectory has shown the continuous slide, negative and downward slide in performance of the card reader, it calls for concern because, like I earlier said, technology does not go backwards, it moves forward. Now, INEC has a huge responsibility to ensure that it stops this backward and downward slide of the performance of the card reader, because the card reader is very, very essential in identifying who the real voter is in terms of the biometrics. Otherwise, it will create very huge problem if you rely only on the voter register, which is manual. The card reader, what it does is to ensure that it gives technological digital bite to whatever you have on ground in the manual register. So that is very important. And if INEC wants to introduce the Z-Pad, which INEC in their own opinion says it will scan the iris, which is an extra biometric authentication of the voter, that is very important. But if eventually the history of this commission after 2015 has been a downward slide in deployment of technology, the commission must walk its talk. And that is why people will not take the rhetorics except if they walk their talk on the day of election.
So you don't subscribe to using voter cards, falling back to just voter cards, because you do know, just like the card readers, some of these devices can fail and flop. So do you subscribe to falling back to just the voter cards and say, well, if you have your voter card, you can vote?
There are 3 steps now. One, the voter register, which must show that the voter who has come to vote is on the voter register. 2, the card reader, which must authenticate the voter's card itself and ensuring that it is not a fake voter's card. You recall that there was some time Alibaba.com said that they had voter's card. They advertised that some people could buy voter's card from their shop, online shop. That happened before 2019 election. So in order to ensure that such fake voter's card are not deployed, that is the job of the card reader, to ensure that the voter's card that was brought by the voter was actually issued by INEC. The third level now is the issue of which they now want to introduce, the use of the Z-Pad. But if that Z-Pad will introduce confusion, let INEC ensure that they fully deploy the card reader and the use of genuine use of the voters register.
It will be very interesting, Mr. Nzako, to see how
To see the conclusion?
all of this is really going to play out, because, I mean, you said something very, very critical, and I think we need to pay attention to it. At least, you know, INEC needs to pay a lot of attention to that one. If technology does not slide backwards, it slides forward all the time, and we have had negatives in our deployment of technology over time, that will put a big question mark on how up-to-date or how upgradable the equipment we have used is for those elections, as well as the reach of internet integration, you know, across, you know, the areas where these things will be deployed. Well, you are not INEC, so we may not be able to ask you that one. But let me ask you about security. We can't digitize security, can we? We have to be with soldiers on ground, with men on ground to ensure that this is done. With all of the rhetorics that have gone on as far as elections is concerned, security challenges or security assessment is concerned, are you confident that we're going to have a smooth sail, or is there something the people themselves need to do to ensure that we do not slide into anarchy?
The critical stakeholders in every election are, one, the voters themselves, who will determine willingly and as a matter of importance to conduct free, fair, and credible election, because it is the same people that are used to cause violence and disrupt the system. The second critical stakeholders are INEC, the electoral umpire themselves. And I've always held INEC accountable. I have always held INEC responsible for any challenge in the process of election. The third critical stakeholder in any electoral process in Nigeria are the security operatives, the security agencies, who themselves are to create the safe environment for voters to freely cast their votes without intimidation, without compulsion, and without harassment. That is the aspect of the security that we are talking about. It is the same security that agencies that have the responsibility to ensure that those who intend to create violence are nipped in the bud through their intelligence network and the intelligence gathering prior to the election. So these are facts that are on ground. Now, if the security agencies themselves play by the rules set by government, by INEC, I do not think we'll have challenges.
Now, still talking about this ZPAD just for a bit more. INEC has this meeting with political parties time and again. If there are any misgivings or any loopholes, parties are expected to raise it. With the introduction of this ZPAD, because, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the AFIS, finger identification system, which is supposed to improve. If they're introducing ZPAD only to snap the result sheet and then transmit to whatever stages before the results are announced, we also do expect that it should be used to complement the finger identification system or the card readers. So that way, you will not have anyone who has warehouse card readers or voter cards come in and make use of them. So if there was a loophole there, shouldn't the parties be speaking up about that? If we haven't heard INEC say that is what is also going to be used, because it has two legs to using the ZPAD.
Yes, there are two legs to using the ZPAD, but what is important, I keep saying it, and I earlier said that, is that INEC said they have experimented the use of the ZPAD in Nasarawa by election. Well, that is a section of the state. Now they are doing election in the entire state. They have not reported how reliable the use of the ZPAD is with respect to biometrics. The ZPAD can be very reliable with respect to transmission of results. If INEC can separate and do what we call division of labor in economics, let the card reader handle the issue of biometrics, and let the ZPAD handle the issue of transmission of results. Because the experience we had in 2019 was that there was a claim that the card reader could not transmit the result. There cannot be a similar claim now with respect to ZPAD. So if INEC is introducing the ZPAD, they should not model up and complicate the use of both functions. Because don't forget that the ad hoc staff that are going to use these electronic gadgets and devices may not have received adequate training in the use of both. So if you separate the functions of both technological devices, it makes it seamless and easy for them to use. Let one handle authentication. I believe that, in all honesty, if the card reader is deployed alongside the voters register itself, that will help and handle the issue of authentication of the voter. And let the Z-pad handle that major challenge of result transmission.
Well, Mr. Nzako, there's something interesting in what you've just said now, and I'd like some clarification from your understanding. The smart card reader is to be used at that point. So already it's been programmed to be able to read some data, so it's domesticated on the device. But the Z-pad is to transmit results from one place to another remote location. That would require some internet integration. So if there is insufficient internet connectivity in that location, what happens?
I know that from experience. If the smart card reader malfunctions, they rely on the incident form to authenticate the voter and then allow the voter.
No, I don't have a problem.
No,
I'm
coming. I'm building up to that. If the Z-pad itself malfunctions, the information in the card reader can be a secondary backup for whatever information that the Z-pad was supposed to transmit. It cannot fail in all polling centers. It cannot. If it fails in a few polling centers, they can now cross-check the information there with what is stored in the card reader. So they will play complementary roles between the Z-pad and the card reader itself. What is important is that authentic result is what is worked on.
Yeah, but before the results, there has to be voting first.
Yes, there has to be voting
before
first.
the results.
Yes, and that is what the card reader will handle.
Yeah, but last time there were those who complained about that voting process, saying even that there were manipulations as to the incident forms, and so it didn't add up. We've seen that in several litigations, and so shouldn't, because they also said that they had actually trained persons, core members, who were also going to be performing the second function of the Z-pad, which is to complement the card reading and finger authentication process, because he has that facility if you can take your iris.
Let me tell you, Chamberlain, these are man-made manipulations and not failure of digital technology. For example, when a supervising polling officer, an SPO, has an ulterior motive of manipulating the process, it starts from even distribution of sensitive materials. That is where you see, like we had in at some time, that elections meant for one local government, ballot materials meant for one local government, is seen in another government. These are man-made intentional manipulation. And if the SPOs themselves do not succumb to such manipulation by the antics of politicians, and if the polling officers themselves are well tutored to handle these issues, these are not illiterates. That is why the minimum standard in selection of a polling officer is a youth corper who is already a graduate. A lot of them are drawn from agencies of government as workers and civil servants. So none of them is illiterate. And these are people that use mobile phones and other tabs and the rest of them on their own. These are people that do transactions online with their banks and the rest of them. So nobody can tell me that they have a crop of people who cannot use the technology. What challenge we have is intentional human manipulation of the system.
Are you saying that there's a possibility that politicians might influence SPOs? Is that even possible?
Oh, that is not possibility. There's a historical fact, huge antecedents, that politicians would like to influence who becomes the SPOs. They would like to submit names of SPOs to INEC for appointment. That is where INEC must not succumb to the antics of politicians. And because the SPO is the head of that organ in that microcosm of the process, in which case, whatever order he gives is what is followed by the presiding officers and the polling agents and the rest of them. So when the politicians try to influence who becomes the SPO based on primordial and other political affiliation, you can now see that INEC has started getting it wrongly. So INEC has another task to ensure that they do not allow politicians to influence who becomes the SPOs.
That'll be a big one, and we're hoping that even as their tenures, the tenure of some of those key INEC officials last November, it won't skew judgment or affect anything. But we do thank you for your thoughts this morning, Mr. Fred Nzako.
Chairman, well, before I go, very shortly, very quickly, if the key officers of this election tenure is going by November, INEC has a responsibility to let Nigerians to conduct credible election in Nigeria. Otherwise, it becomes an issue of usage of their position to influence one or two opinions.
All right, then let's move on to Mr. Tokunbo Wahab. He is a special advisor on education to Lagos State government. Don't worry, he's not talking about Edo elections. He's going to talk about the resumption of schools as has been announced by Lagos. Well, 2 days. First, we do have September 21. They're working to ensure that the others do come in. Mr. Wahab, thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, I know you must have heard about some concerns that parents have about letting their children go to school, how they are going to cope, particularly those who have got to make use of the public transportation system to school and back home. What are your thoughts? What would you tell those who are that concerned about it?
Thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning, Nigerians. Basically, Chamberlain, we're at a point where scientifically we've been proven to have flattened the curve, and it invariably means that we are not as exposed as we used to be some 5, 4, 3 months back. So consequently, we have to find a way to bring our lives back to normal. And in doing that, education is very critical to whatever we're going to do. The past few weeks, we've been putting in place measures and facilities that will enable our children come back to school. And even at that, what we seek to do from next week is to start a phased reopening of our tertiary institutions. Chamberlain, on the 14th, we have announced that our tertiary institutions are going to open to our students for the first time after 6 months. In the interim, in 6 months, we've also ensured that Lagos State and Lagos tertiary institutions are their students learning through the LMS platform provided by NVivo, which means that whilst at home, they were doing their programs, they were having their lectures, and those lectures never stopped. So invariably, what they're going to come to do on campus is have their revision one-on-one, and then they can now have their exams and their dissertation as per their projects. Now, for our tertiary from on the 14th, we're going to start with the final year students across our tertiary institutions. With those final year students, we are sure that they are older, they are more matured. They're going to come back to meet up with the protocol as put in place by the institutions based on the regulations of NCDC. And after we have phased them out, maybe after their exams, then those that are in the penultimate year will come on campus. So we're not going to put all our students on campus at the same time. Now, for our secondary, from the 21st, they're also going to have a phased resumption. As you are all aware, those in the SS3 classes now, writing their final exams, are going to finish their exams this week.
Uh-oh.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, seems to have lost him for a bit, but hoping to get that back. But I was going to ask him, look, things change so quick and fast. Look at the States, for instance. This spiked in tertiary institutions, and then there was huge concern. In UK at the moment, they're planning to no gathering more than 6 in the days ahead. So if those were to be the case, what are we learning from those scenarios as they change so quick?
And what have we even learned from the safe reopening of schools? You know, I mean, senior secondary school students reopened, and you know how many people were actually infected as a result of that. Well, we have him back. Just, I know that the federal government asks states to conduct risk assessments. As you land on that thought just before we lost the connection, what did the state find regarding risk assessments? Did you visit the schools? What did you find?
Thank you very much. We have our Office of Education Quality Assurance, and we visited all the schools, all the schools in the state, both private, where we have about 18,000 private schools, and then our public schools are 8,634. So we visited all the schools, and then we took assessment of all the schools, their needs assessments, and in the past few weeks, we have put in place requirements that will enable us bring them back to school. Water, their wash and basins, soap, and all the things that are required to be put in place, even as we speak. They have also been required to go online and register if you meet the basic requirements, and you'll be licensed and given the go-ahead to go and open. Even at that, we're not going to allow all of them come back to school at the same time. It will be phased to the extent that on the 21st, we're going to open our primary schools, yes. And we made that clear to the parents. Those in primary 6 are going to be promoted to GS using their assessments, while those in SS2 and SS1 will come back to school first. Then we observe and see how it goes for a few weeks before we now bring back those in GSS3, GSS2, and GSS1. So it's going to be a phased resumption.
Now, it's also interesting that you have mentioned the tiers, the other tiers of those classes, because the challenge is in the number of the schools, the number of students in the schools and the number of students in each class. And since it is phased, let's hope that that's been dealt with. But this protocol that you talked about, did it also factor in the fact that there are children that have special needs, children who themselves are in, dire conditions that could be vulnerable to this COVID-19, no matter what class they are?
Yes. We factor them in. And to a large extent, we had also made plans for them the way we do for our regular students across the states.
Yes. What are the plans that you have lined up for those students with special needs, as you talked about, those ones with special health conditions?
For most of them, when they have a way of coming to campus or coming to schools, supported by maybe parents or a colleague of theirs, they are given a special place to sit down, write their exams. Maybe they are impaired by way of sight. Their brain will be there. They have to go to the regular protocol of regular check, and then the regular test, and then rinse your hand, wear your face mask before you even admitted in. And then the person helping you do that will have to go to the same protocol, and they'll be admitted to our schools.
All right, then, talking about Wahab, thank you for talking to us. We just do hope everything turns out well.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
All right. Okay, so let's take a look at Gandhi Puzo. Well, you sent this tweet. It says, well, we were told by INEC of the Indigo when we went for training. It means you went for one. The Indigo is a machine that stops multiple voting. But at the end of the training, the same INEC came back to tell us that it won't be feasible in this election.
Which election is it?
This. We're talking about one. Edo at the time.
Okay.
So one imagines that he's talking about Edo. So Indigo, if it's not, let us know.
Well, Badan Jokshu talks about allowances and how, government don't joke with the allowances and all. But take a look at this one from Henry, saying that the conversations in governance and stewardship in the nation's health sector are too superficial. Deepen it by looking for enduring solutions to sustainable financing, innovations, market-directed capacity building, and most importantly, voices of citizens, which is what we're doing. Of course, getting your thoughts in.
Fred Afo George believes that we'll jump to the streets to protest any hike in fuel price, but we'll fail to closely look into the extremely high cost of food items like rice that has increased from 7,000 naira to 27,000 naira or even more. Wrong government policies send more people into poverty than taking them out.
Okay, well, this one, okay, that's from Fred. Can we see the one for covering Duke Chukwu if we can? He says any government that cannot guarantee the safety of its citizens and provide employment opportunities, good health care, and an enabling environment for business and investors to thrive, such government has failed.
So many tweets, but we appreciate you for sending them in.
Okay, well, look at this one. Oh, Jesus. All right, so there you go. That is the show today. Thank you for your thoughts and for sending those emails. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Please stay safe and have a